Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on the Migraine Masterclass with Dr. Bob Sheeler today. I'm Michelle Dreilich. I'm the co-founder of Destiny Well. I'm also a nutritionist as well that has been in practice for over a decade. So together we'll hopefully be able to answer all of your questions. But really, the purpose for today is introducing you to Dr. Bob Sheeler. In the next hour, you're going to learn from Dr. Sheeler, who is the world's foremost expert in the area of migraine. Two things, well, lots of things, but specifically two. One, why are migraines so challenging, even for doctors to solve? You might think you know the answer to that, but we're going to dive deeper and hopefully give you a good explanation. And then the second thing is we're going to talk about the single most important thing that you need to actually reverse and solve your migraines. We hear time and time again from folks when we talk in groups like this that they've given up hope that that's possible. So hopefully at the end of today, you'll understand that there is an approach for discovering and reversing the root causes of your migraines. So I'm going to go ahead and let you know that we know everyone loves kind of a prize at the end of the finish line. And so at the end of the presentation today, I'm going to tell you about a special bonus that has to do with a lab test that we're going to offer. So at the very end, if you stick around, you'll learn about how to get your hands on this bonus for free. So we come to the point where, you know, we have these conversations with folks all the time, and we love to start the conversation off knowing that you've tried so many different things. Take a moment, if you don't mind, and use the chat and just let us know in a word or two how many different things you think you've tried to address your migraines. We love to see these answers. They come in and it's different all the time. There's no answer that's inappropriate, that doesn't work or silly. We've heard all. So I see Terry says 100. Jacqueline said, I've lost count. We hear that a lot. Robin says drugs, natural remedies. Jennifer
There's
says,
To Cure A Migraine, Topamax, one of the strongest headache drugs, but also pretty intense.
Mm-hmm. Right. So many different medications, diet, essential oils, CBD, so many different things. So I just want you to know you're not alone with that. We hear this always. And in fact, very often it's 25 or more things. So this is really reassuring to let you know that you're in the right place, right? So just to reinforce that, this is where you want to be. Obviously, people that come to these presentations in droves are just like you. They've suffered from migraines, or they have a close loved one that also suffers from migraines. And the commonality I think that everyone shares is that they feel like they've tried everything to get control of their migraines. Whether, just like on this list, whether it's natural remedies, medications, acupuncture, massage, so many different things that you may have already tried. And what you recognize is that at the end of the road, there is this pattern of a lifelong dependency on medication that is so common with migraine sufferers. And whether or not you find yourself in that position, are okay with that or prefer to avoid that, very often we find that folks that come to these webinars want to learn about how to avoid that. The reassuring thing is that you recognize the idea that this is not fair. You shouldn't have to live like this, and you're absolutely right. And you'll learn from Dr. Bob, who also was a former serious migraine sufferer. But the most important thing, and I think the aspect of this that gives me hope and everyone out there, is the reason why you're here today is because you actually believe, even though you've tried that whole list of things to, different remedies to reverse your migraines, you still believe that there is a path to migraine freedom. And I think that's really important, because that's why we're here, and that's why you don't want to give up hope. So I want to just assert something to you, because if these little spheres represent everything you have tried, I want you to open your mind up to the idea that this time it actually might be different, right? What if, I mean, you took this subtype quiz, hopefully. If not, we strongly encourage you at the end of this webinar to take the subtype quiz and learn more about your migraine subtype, which is what we're going to cover today. But what if this time, and having that information unlock doors for you that you didn't recognize or have access to? So I just want you to open your mind up to that as we move forward. The idea that subtypes are unique and they're the key to this. This is Dr. Sheeler's decades of research have led him to this idea of subtypes, so that we can move more towards solving the problem than masking it and just, trying to cover it. So the whole idea is that the root cause actually dictates your path. So not only is it recognizing the things that could be causing your migraines, but know that once you've identified them, they guide the direction you go in, so that there is not a one size fits all. And the reason why, for instance, magnesium might work for your friend with migraines but doesn't work for you is because you likely have different root causes. It's not a one size fits all approach. And that's what we're here to help with today. We're going to walk you through all of this. So one of the things you're going to come to understand today is that the idea behind migraines out in the world, when you've been to many physicians, is that you've likely learned that you either have migraine with aura, migraine without aura, or ocular migraines. You might have heard these clinical terms. But the truth is, when it comes to the real root cause of what could be causing your migraines, Dr. Sheeler has uncovered at least 9, if not more, of these subtypes that we're going to dig into today. So with that in mind, I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Sheeler. I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself, but I think most importantly, to hear about his journey that got him here, because I just want to emphasize that this is 25, 30 years in the making of understanding root causes of migraines. And so I just love it when he tells his story.
Great. Well, thank you. Delighted to be here. Before I get started, I want to address something that's popped up a couple of times on chat as some folks who didn't completely get their subtype from the quiz. And so it's presented in the form of a diagram, but then there's also a letter code. So we'll give you the secret decoder at the end for the letters. And then if that isn't enough, we're happy to have you work with our team on chat so they can help get you that specific information if you didn't screenshot the part that had the picture of which subtypes you categorized as. So we'll make sure you get that information by the time you're done. So welcome. I'm delighted to be here and happy to have the chance to speak with you. So my migraine story begins a long time ago. My grandmother, Grace Switzer, was someone who had migraine, and she was born in the 1890s. She also had asthma, and as we'll talk about a little bit later, migraine is comorbid with a bunch of conditions, which means if you have migraine, you're more likely to have other things. If you have some things, you're more likely to have migraines. But my grandma had bad migraines and bad asthma. And back at the time, the only thing that was around to treat it was morphine. And she was such a tough lady that she would do morphine while she was having bad asthma and spells of bad migraine, and then she'd cold turkey herself off of it over and over again. That sort of led up down the path in terms of my migraine lineage is that my dad had bad migraines. And I remember him suffering into his 70s with migraines. It didn't keep him from succeeding in life. He's ended up speaking 7 languages and wrote over 100 textbooks to teach foreign students English. But I remember growing up that he had a lot of problems with that, and they didn't go away for a long time. This is me in my pre-migraine years and before I even decided to study medicine. And so the path is long, but the genes were there. And sooner or later, I actually ended up with migraine. So this is me in my first medical practice. And I always had an interest in headaches because I had headaches myself. I started having them as I was a teenager, and I had them through college, but they got really intense in medical school. And by the time I was in medical school, I figured out what they were because I learned how to diagnose things. And in my practice, I found that headache patients would often come to see me because I was more interested in headaches than other folks. And some of you may have had this experience as well. You go to some doctors and they go, headache. And they partly do that because they aren't good at treating it and because it takes patience and kindness and a bit of time to untangle headaches. And so we're trained, you have strep throat, here, take penicillin, you'll be better tomorrow or the next day. And so things that don't fit into that pattern where you just give somebody something and they get better are frustrating for a lot of doctors. But I was patient with headaches because I had them myself and I was having them myself sort of the whole time. Headaches and high blood pressure were two things I was always interested in and I was always pretty good at. When I was at Mayo Clinic, in my department, I always was the top person in terms of the percentage of people whose blood pressure was controlled, because I would continue to adjust and fine tune and add lifestyle factors and work with people until I got them to those targets. And the same thing with headaches, is I would just keep working with people, although initially the number of tools that I had was limited. So as I moved my practice from Wisconsin to Mayo Clinic, I continued to study headaches more. I joined national headache societies and international headache societies. I studied at international headache meetings all over the world. I presented and lectured both nationally and internationally on headaches and other things. And so I was eventually able to certify as a headache subspecialist through the United Council of Neurologic Subspecialties. And that's the same group that certifies neurologists who are interested in headaches who want to have a subspecialty certification. So I took that neurology headache board type exam and became a certified specialist in headache medicine. And I felt, okay, I've arrived. I have studied this. I have all the tools of a headache specialist. I'm ready to be here and to help everybody with headaches, because now I've got all the tools that the neurologists have to do this, and we're ready to go. But I found that despite the fact that I did really fun things while I was at Mayo Clinic, I ran the neuropsychiatric medicine group, I was the medical editor of the Mayo Clinic Health Letter, and I had a great team there, and I loved to work with them. I published things in some of the most prestigious general medical and headache journals, including JAMA and the New England Journal. But despite all this, I felt like a success and a failure. I was a success because I was doing all the stuff you're supposed to do to succeed in academic medicine. My patients liked me as a headache doctor and they knew I cared, and a few of them got better. But during that time, my own migraines were getting worse and they were still frequent and disabling, and they really slowed me down. Some of that might have been because I was working 18 to 20-hour days and not getting much sleep, but some of it's because I really hadn't found the key to the headaches. And so both because I wasn't really fixing people, I was just putting Band-Aids on their headaches, and because my own headaches weren't really resolving, I felt like I hadn't really succeeded at being a doctor, because as being a doctor, you're supposed to find things and cure them, not just treat the symptoms. So I learned an interesting thing in headache medicine. So if I want to publish an article in a headache journal, or I have a new drug or a new device, the standard is 50% get 50% better. And what does that mean? So if I treat 100 patients, 50% of them get 50% better. So their headaches improve by half. And that's considered a standard of care in a successful trial. So I often thought about that. And so if I took other field of medicine, if I went to somebody with a strep throat, or if I had pneumonia, and I went to one of my partners and said, hey, I've got pneumonia. And they said, oh, well, I've got a treatment here that's got a 50% chance of making you half better. I'd say, what else you got? That's not what we're looking for. I don't want to have a half chance. That sucks. We actually need to do better for headache than that. So I was driven to try to find that. Even expensive drugs like Botox barely beat placebo when you give somebody saline control injections. And so we really need to be able to do better, rather than just cutting a day or two off your headache, which is of some value. We need to be able to address the root cause and get them to be better. Now, this is one of my best teachers. This is Ranger, dog we had when we had a farm down in southern Minnesota, and he was the most patient, kind, gentle soul. He would, whenever there was a litter of kittens born, and they would all come and snuggle with him, and he would just wait until they were done to leave. And so that's kind of what we had to do for migraine for a lot of people. We just have to wait for them to go away, try different things, because we didn't really have a solution. We could just sort of be there with the person and give them some things that might make it somewhat better. So I learned functional and integrative medicine. I studied with the Institute for Functional Medicine and got certified in functional medicine. I took the integrative medicine boards, and my wife studied with Andrew Weil and got boarded in integrative medicine as well. And both of these look for root causes and look at people in a holistic way. I started using these treatments on myself beyond just standard medicine, beyond just treating the acute headaches. or taking preventive medicine, I started looking at things in a holistic way. And lo and behold, my own headaches started to improve significantly. When they'd been locked in for years, I started making real progress. I became obsessed with finding treatable root causes of migraine rather than just treating the symptoms over and over. In the process, I thought 50% just isn't good enough. I just wasn't accepting that. My goal became not to suppress headache symptoms, but to make headaches go away, because I'd had some successes doing this using this approach. I ordered tests that people didn't think were part of the standard of care for migraine. They're going, what are you doing ordering those tests? You don't need that. I raised eyebrows. People going, why are you doing those things? At my annual reviews with my department chairman and the administrators, they'd show me the statistics on how many tests I ordered compared to my colleagues. They're always nice about it. It's like, hey, you ordered all these tests, Bob. Nobody else is ordering all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but I was finding all sorts of stuff that was fixable in headache patients. I found 13-year-old girls who had thyroid problems. And when we fixed the thyroid problems, their headaches got better. I found celiac disease in people who'd had migraine for 20 or 30 years. I was finding vitamin B12 deficiency in vegetarians and in gastric bypass patients. And when we gave them enough B12 to normalize, their headaches went away. I found vitamin D deficiency in all sorts of people. In Minnesota, I found in my own basement where my teenagers were playing video games. And it turns out that a video screen does not give off enough light to have you manufacture vitamin D. You need sunshine. But also in Arizona, we have a lot of people who are low in vitamin D because it's pretty nasty out during the days. It's been 115 here several days in a row. And so you don't really go outside that much in Arizona either in the summer. I found iron deficiency in people with heavy cycles. And I also found iron deficiency in people who did long distance running. And when we fixed their ferritin and their iron deficiency, their headaches got better. So a lot of these people, their headaches resolved completely. They had zip, nada, none, no more, never again, that kind of completely. And by that time, I had done enough of these treatments on myself that my headaches had gone away. And not only did my headaches go away, but after they had been gone for several months, I was able to taper off my supplements and other treatments, and I was able to say that I am headache-free without any medicines. I basically learned how to not have headaches, and I learned the things to do to keep me in the zone. And also when I started drifting into headache, I would be able to not go there, because we have a phrase in neurology, what fires together wires together. And the more you fire off those headache pathways, the easier they are and the lower the threshold to trigger them. After you get rid of the headaches for a while, your brain unlearns how to have headaches. And so it's not the natural response to everything. So finally, I had something really unique. When my colleagues sent me their most difficult headache cases, I was excited because I knew I could help a lot of those folks. I spent the next few years recognizing different patterns of causes. How can I recognize what kind of approach, what kind of treatments, what kind of supplements, what kind of diet, what kind of acupuncture, just the whole spectrum of things that we had available, what kinds of things help different groups of patients, and how do I recognize them and put them into categories? And that's where I came up with the whole concept of using headache subtypes. And so I was able to classify people into different groups of subtypes. Some of them were the same classifications that the standard International Classification of Headache Society groupings use, and some of them were unique subtypes based on the functions and what got people better. So this was the culmination of my 2 decades of discovery of working with people with migraines, understanding their suffering, getting the feeling, and so things have sort of a taste and a feel and an overall sensation of what kinds of patients get better with what kinds of approaches. And I was able to put these into subtypes. So there are subtypes I look at in 3 different groups. There's the major subtypes, and that's the aura and the no aura. There's the root cause subtypes, and that's the unique approach that we have of categorizing people. And then on top of that, we have to figure out if people have a rebound headache. If they have medication overuse, then their headaches will lose their normal migraine character. They'll just get to be a dull all over headache most days. And the worst thing is they won't respond to any of the approaches, to diet, to medicine, to acute treatment, to preventive treatment. So if there's a rebound component, we have to find that and address it. So the 2 major subtypes are migraine without aura, and about 70% of people have migraine without aura as their underlying disorder. It often starts later. So women often get it around the time they get their cycles or within a few years after that. Men get it in their late teens to early 20s. So the without aura and the with aura behave almost as different diseases. So the without aura is more hormonally associated. Women get it with their cycles or at mid-cycle, at times when estrogen drops. They get it or it goes away with pregnancy, and the same after pregnancy when estrogen levels go down. They get it around the time of perimenopause when estrogen levels are falling, or early menopause when the estrogen levels are low. Then the body accommodates to it, and this type of headache will often go away with menopause in women. It's usually associated with the typical migraine symptoms. So one of the questions we got in a lot of the other webinars is, well, how do I know if it's a stress headache or a cluster headache or a migraine? Well, there are functional MRI tests and stuff you can do in research, but basically we make the diagnosis of migraine clinically. So if it has two of the top criteria, it's worse with exercise, it's often on one side of your head, it's pounding as opposed to squeezing, and it's moderate to severe, then you need two of those, and then you need one of the categories below. You have nausea or vomiting, or you have light and sound sensitivity. So if you've had 5 or more headaches that last 4 to 72 hours that have those characteristics, then you have migraine. Then to have the aura part, you have those other characteristics, the one-sided pounding, nausea, light sensitivity type stuff, plus you have fully reversible symptoms that start an hour before or during your headache, and then they usually resolve within an hour into the headache. This is a different disease, migraine with aura, and it's worse. Only about 30% of people have it, but it has more associations with heart attack and stroke, and more people have more complicated comorbidities. So you're more likely to have severe depression or bipolar or panic attacks, or even non-migraine conditions like asthma or restless legs. So the 4 types of aura are visual, and that's the most common, and there's positive and negative visual aura. So positive, on the right, is one of the zigzag patterns we call tecopsia, and so that's something that you see that's not there. Another positive visual aura is people get flashing lights, and that's another type of visual aura. And then people have negative visual aura. They'll have dark spots, or they'll lose part of their visual field. And you always lose part of the visual field on the same side. And so people say, oh, it's just one side. But if they close their eye, it's that one part of the visual field on both eyes. And that's the way to tell it's not just a separate eye problem. Then there's sensory aura, which has positive and negative. It can be tingling, or it can be numbness. There's linguistic aura that's really scary, where people have garbled speech and can't speak very well during their aura. It's not a stroke, but it's very scary, and it goes away. And then there's motor aura, and that's actually more serious, and it's a genetic component that often one of your parents has had it, and you had a 50% chance of getting it. That's where you get like paralysis on one side of your body or something with it, and that goes along with a higher risk of stroke and other complications. And so that's a more serious type of migraine called hemiplegic migraine. So we've come to the root causes of the subtypes, and when you've taken the quiz, this is how you get the results. You see which of these subtypes light up. So we're going to go ahead, we've talked about rebound already, and introduce you to our first patient. So several of my patients from over time have given their permission for us to use their case studies. And so Lizette was somebody I knew as a colleague. She was a high-stress nursing supervisor. She'd have headaches that would start around her eye, and they'd be pounding. Sometimes they'd be on the left side, but once in a while be on the right side. Her headaches usually lasted 24 to 48 hours. So she'd lose a day or two of function when she had them. She had a lot of nausea and vomiting. And then she had an unusual pattern of her headaches. She'd have a migraine every other day for a month or so. And then she'd have 5 or 6 weeks without any headaches. They weren't related to her menstrual cycle or anything else we could figure out. And she went from doctor to doctor, and they would all tell her, well, try this medicine, try that medicine. They said, medicine's really the only option we have to get you better because you're having so much trouble. So Lizette's subtypes on the quiz, she had the adrenal subtype, and then she had underlying migraine without aura. And so this is how she got the results on her quiz. So the adrenal subtype lit up, and then her major underlying subtype was primary migraine without aura. So we did specific stress reduction. We gave her mind-body exercises. We gave her a meditation tool. It was an electronic device. She had targeted nutritional supplements to support her adrenal system and the things that she had going on. We tried to do some things to give her deeper sleep, because deep restorative sleep is associated with cure from migraine. And then we gave her specific type of exercises to do. And she got 30% better. She went, wow, okay, I'm having a lot less migraines, 30% more is a lot more days. But we said, this is not what we're looking for. We're happy that you've had some improvement, but it's not enough. So we did a number of other tests, and one of them was food sensitivity testing. And when we did that, we found out she was sensitive to corn and soy. And we did an elimination diet, and then when we challenged her again with the corn and soy, she would get her headaches. And so not only did her headaches get better, like 99% better, but we were able to solve the mystery of her unusual pattern. And she would have headaches every other day for a month, and then she'd have 5 or 6 weeks that were headache-free. Well, it turns out her mother, who lived in a nearby town, knew she was working hard, knew she was taking care of her kids and her family, so she would come over and fill up the freezer with casseroles. And the casseroles all had corn and beans in them because that's what she liked to cook. So she would eat these casseroles, and she'd get her triggers for her headaches, and she'd have them, and then she'd run out. And she'd go back to eating other things, and her headaches would go away. So when we were able to pinpoint that and put her on a low corn and beans diet, her headaches were basically gone. So working through subtypes is sort of like peeling an onion. You start with what the most prominent subtype is and what's the main driver that you can find. And then when you've gotten that addressed, then you go to the next layer. Sometimes the predominant subtype is so critical that fixing that fixes everything else. But more often, people will have 2 or 3 or 4 subtypes, or if you're somebody who checks like, well, yeah, once in a while I have this, once in a while I have that, you might even get a lot of subtypes. But you can try to determine which one is the primary one. After we address the primary one, we want to see what's left. I want to talk to you a little bit about migraine being a threshold disorder. There's an underlying genetic component, so about 70% of people have a close family member with migraine. Usually it's not just one gene we can identify, it's a whole clusters of genes that work together and add up. Then there's underlying systemic or neuroinflammation. If you have inflammation in your body, or you have insulin resistance and metabolic issues, you're getting to be overweight, then those things all lead to inflammation in the brain that make migraine more likely, and it makes migraine more likely to get chronic. And then we have your root cause subtypes. And as you can see on the bar on the right, it goes from green to yellow to orange and red. So red is where you're triggering headaches all the time. And we say a lot about, people say, oh, well, I drink a glass of red wine or eat chocolate, I get a headache. That's the cause of my headaches. No, that's because you're living in the yellow zone or the edge of the red zone, and any little thing will push you over. So that's the trigger that pushes you over. That's not what caused you to be at the edge of the cliff all the time. So migraine being a threshold disorder, if we address those root cause subtypes, and then we also do things that are healthy for your metabolism and decrease general inflammation in your blood, we get you further and further away from that threshold. So I used to get headaches from red wine and from beer, and so I would mostly learn to avoid them. But now that I don't have headaches anymore, and now that I live far away from that threshold, when I went to Europe last summer with one of my kids and some of his college friends, they required me to imbibe some alcoholic beverages, including some European beers. And I was able to drink a few of them and not get headaches. So as you get far away from that threshold, then you can do those things that you think cause your headaches and usually trigger it. And lots of times you can get away with that. So we're going to dig into the subtypes. Here's the summary of the subtypes. And we're going to go through these one at a time to talk about them. So there's the post-traumatic. Now you'll notice here if you talk to a neurologist or you read the headache literature that we use some of these terms differently than is the classification of headache disorders. So post-traumatic headaches for headache specialists include things beyond migraine, but we're just talking about post-traumatic migraine pattern headaches that are brought out, not all the other types of post-traumatic headaches. So if you have underlying migraine genetics, like your mother and your sister and your aunt have had migraines and you never had them, but you get in a car accident or you start playing soccer, then you may start to have headaches more and more. Often that'll bring out that pattern for 6 to 18 months. Acute trauma or repeated severe insults can cause that. And then chronic repeated trauma like boxing or heading the ball in soccer, all those can give you chronic headaches, and they can increase your risk of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a long-term brain degeneration process. Then there's the facial subtype, and this is an important one because there are many fixable causes in this. These are headaches that are more in the front part of the head. So dental problems, TMJ jaw problems, grinding or clenching your jaw, which you may even do unconsciously. Sometimes your dentist will say, oh, you're grinding your teeth. Sinus problems, and a lot of the fixable problems are sinus problems related to food sensitivities, food allergies, or sometimes environmental things. And so allergies can do that. And then the other thing that makes facial confusing is the trigeminal nerve. So the trigeminal nerve has three branches, one that comes to the upper face, one that comes to the mid face, and one that comes to the lower face. And so people, when they get migraines in the branches of the trigeminal nerve, they might say, oh, well, I always get it right here where my sinus is. And so I call my ENT doctor and they phone in some antibiotics, and within 2 or 3 days, I'm better. It's like, okay, well, a migraine lasts 48 to 72 hours on the lungs end, and you're taking antibiotics every time and you get better because the migraine got better. So some of my headache colleagues at Mayo 20 years or so ago did research and found out that a lot of these were migraines, and the ENT doctors would do CAT scans and MRIs and do scope tests up in the nose, and they go, wow, I don't see anything. And it turned out that a lot of these were migraine. Now, it's actually more complicated than that, because now the ENT doctors will CAT scan you and say, well, there's nothing there. Go see a headache specialist or go see your doctor, because this isn't something I can deal with. But there are ear, nose, throat triggers that irritate the branches of the trigeminal nerve that make the migraine happen. So it's more complicated than it's just migraine in that distribution, and it's more complicated than it's just pain from a sinus infection. So these things interplay in both directions in subtle ways. Then there's structural headaches, and this is one that we define substantially different than a neurologist. A neurologist to say a structural headache is your brainstem is pushing down through the opening where your spinal cord is, or you've got a big cyst in your brain, or you've got an aneurysm. So those are types of structural headaches, but for a migraine root cause, we're talking about the structure and the way that you hold tension and carry pain in your neck and your shoulder area. A lot of these are back of the head headaches, and they're related to chronic position stress, sleeping wrong, computer work, shoulder and upper back strain. Then we're going to talk about all of the hormone subtypes. So we don't just say, people say, oh, I have hormonal related migraines. They're usually talking about menstrual migraines and sex steroid or estrogen hormones. But thyroid hormone can drive headaches as well. So when people's thyroid is out of balance, usually it's Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, but hyperthyroidism can do it as well. And women have Hashimoto's more because they have more autoimmune disease. So more women have thyroid difficulties. And when you replace thyroid aggressively and get all of the thyroid hormones in balance rather than just give the simple replacement hormone, then lots of times migraine headaches can get dramatically better, as can energy and overall well-being. Then there's the adrenal hormone subtype, and many of our patients who take the quiz come up with adrenal subtype. And I think that's because in our society, there is so much stress. So adrenal is a master hormone. We need it for minute-to-minute existence. And then there's something in functional medicine called the cortisol steal. So if you're really stressed, you'll take precursors that are supposed to be made into estrogen and testosterone and other things, and you'll make those all into cortisol. And if your cortisol stays too high too long, it disrupts your day-night sleep cycles, it messes with your melatonin, your estrogen, testosterone levels go down, and then it can even shrink areas in your brain like the hippocampus that are important for incorporating short-term memories. Then there's the classic reproductive hormones that a lot of women get. These are the menstrual migraines. They're mediated by things like prostaglandins and prostacyclins, and so if you take these compounds that are formed during the menstrual cycle and you inject them into people intravenously, they get the exact kind of migraine headaches. So mostly it's estrogen, and it happens when estrogen levels are falling. So estrogen levels fall slightly at mid-cycle, and a lot of people will get a migraine then, and then they fall with the cycle. And people who have bad menstrual migraines will have headaches that are more intense and harder to treat, and they might last 5 to 7 days. They can also get them after a delivery, and then we talked about menopause and early menopause and perimenopause are times when estrogen levels are going up and down, but they're mostly going down, and the body's not used to that. Then there's one of the most common types in the world, which is glucotoxicity. This is related to the hormone insulin, so we could call it a fourth hormonal type, but it's actually a toxin type. So glucose is a toxic substance. We're not meant to process huge amounts of that, and when we do, we spike our insulin. It leads us to hypoglycemia, so you can get headaches from low sugars, and it leads to hyperglycemia, where you get more inflammation. So sugar's too high, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, Systemic inflammation, we already talked about. Inflammation makes migraines more likely to happen, and it makes them more likely to become chronic. And chronic high sugars can increase your risk. People with diabetes have more chance of neurodegenerative diseases, including things like Alzheimer's. If your sugars are too low, you'll frequently get late afternoon headaches or late morning headaches, or whatever your circadian equivalent is if you do shift work. And then sometimes even just fasting overnight, if your body is not processing, able to burn fats well, if you don't have that metabolic flexibility, then you'll get headaches from low sugars as well. And they don't have to be, medically low sugars. They just have to be on the low end of normal, lower than what your body is expecting. So it doesn't have to be an insulin secreting tumor or insulin shock. It's just you're running lower than your brain wants, and so it gets a headache. Then there's environmental toxicity. That's a different type of toxins it's important to tease out. Things like heavy metal, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, lead. We've all heard the stories about Michigan with lead in the water. Arsenic is one of the more common things that we get poisoned with, and there are certain areas of the country where there's arsenic in the water, and then those kinds of things can change your metabolism and cause toxic problems. There are mold toxins, and that's called mycotoxins. There are special tests and treatments for that, and then there are organotoxins, all sorts of things from plastics to phthalates and cosmetics to pesticides and herbicides and things that we get in our food supply. And then there's the underlying types. There's the primary migraine with or without aura. And if you've wiped out all the rest of the subtypes or you don't have the other subtypes, then you end up in one of these categories because this is the underlying genetic component of migraine. So finding your dominant subtype. We talked about most people have two or three or even more root cause subtypes. So how do you figure out which subtype you have? Well, let's say I let up 4 different ones. So then I want to go through what are the characteristics of that subtype, and we talked about that, through the area there. So where is the headache? If it's in the front of the head, then it's more likely to be in that facial subtype. If it's in the back of the head, then it's more likely to be in our structural subtype. And we're talking about the majority of the headaches you get. So if it's like, okay, I have 20 headaches a month, and like one of them sometimes is here, and one of them is sometimes, every, once a year I have them with my cycle. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about when, where, and what are the predominant headaches that you get that are your day-to-day and most severe and most intense and disabling migraines. So if they're in the front of the head, they're more likely to be that sinus facial component. If they're in the back of the head, they're more likely to be structural. When are they? Are they related to your menstrual cycle? Are they related to when you're sleep deprived? Are they related to when you're extra stressed? Then that's more adrenal. If they're related to your menstrual cycle, then that's more hormonal. And then what causes them? Do they come on more when you eat a high glycemic diet, when you're eating lots of sugars, or when you're binging on sugars and having that insulin spike up, and then the headache late afternoon that's treatable by taking something sweet like chai latte or whatever. So the most common one is your predominant subtype. After you get a handle on that, other subtypes that are masked can become more clear and need to be addressed at that point. So then we shift the focus. We might use a different approach for the care of the headache as we delve deeper in level by level. So does that make sense to you? Do you see why many of the approaches that you use probably didn't really have a chance of getting to the root cause of your migraine? They only had a chance of suppressing the symptoms. So now that you understand your subtype, or you're on the way to doing that when you go back and dissect this and do some serious thinking about these different pieces, then you know that you have the ability to take the first steps to do something that will really get to the root cause of your headaches. This is the opposite of one size fits all. One size fits all is you have migraine. I figured out you don't have pneumonia, you don't have a broken leg, you're a migraine patient. So here, take a migraine medicine. But the root cause approach says, what's causing that migraine? Whether it's an illness like depression or whether it's something like migraine, that's the end result. That's not just what you have. It's like, what do you have? You have migraine. So what do? We treat migraine with this. Well, why is it migraine? Well, it's migraine because it responds to that. It's like, there are specific things that cause migraine. Migraine is a threshold disorder. There are things that push you closer to that. And if we work on those, you'll live further away from the migraine zone to the point that you may get to where you don't trigger them at all. And that's what we're hoping for you.
So, Dr. Bob, would you say that if you're not working on the root cause, then that's the opportunity. That's where the largest amount of opportunity exists to kind of get that threshold down.
Exactly. If you really want to make progress and get rid of your headaches rather than just get them a little better or find something to do when they come on, then you need that root cause approach.
The other thing that I loved what you said in the beginning when we were talking about the layering and the stacks was because we get this question a lot about genes and genetics, and just like you said in your story, your grandmother, your father, and you, very often I think people are led to believe because it's in their genes that they're kind of a slave to it and there's nothing they can do. But that idea of your root cause is independent of that. And so you have the control to take over and better manage your migraine threshold, even though you've got that genetic thing. That genetic thing is not despite having it, it's even though you have it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool. So this is kind of why we're all here, right? We've talked about this in the very beginning of the presentation, and hopefully this makes sense now that you may feel, we hear this over and over again, that folks feel like they're living their life between their migraines, right? And the idea behind a root cause kind of freeing up that space that happens between your migraines. And that's really what we're talking about. You're here because you know that medication, just like Dr. Bob just said, it's migraine, so this medication works. In fact, based on the discussion about rebound, we just learned that over time, that medication actually stops being your friend and starts to become your enemy in the case of rebounds. I think also, if we really approach it this way, it's not that your doctor doesn't mean well. Our culture and our society puts physicians in a place where they can't always say, I don't know anymore. They can't get to the end of the road and say, we're at the end of my road, I don't know what to say. So they continue to try to fix things with medication because that's their primary arsenal. Or they'll say, my last patient said magnesium worked for them, you should try magnesium. And so it's not that they don't mean well, they're just missing these pieces. That's at least my experience in working with physicians. So that's why we say, like, what better time than now that, after going from doctor to doctor, desperately seeking a solution, the good news is to know that we're in a place and a time now, the way our healthcare system is set up, that you can actually take control of this yourself. This is something that we as individuals can learn to control ourselves. And that's exactly what Dr. Bob is kind of talking about today, which is looking for your own root cause and then reversing that yourself. So the obvious question then becomes, how do I do this? How do I learn what actions I need to take, right? We took this quiz, we found our results, and now what does that mean about the next step? What path does that put me on as someone with migraines, right? So the obvious answer is, there are really kind of two answers based on what we've just kind of reviewed together. The first one, which I'm hearing loud and clear, is if we take a root cause approach to migraines, you're then able to much better manage and ultimately reverse and eliminate your chronic migraines. Or this process of this continual hunt and peck, like I said, the system puts us in this place because if a clinician is at the end of their line in knowledge, they're going to send you off in different directions to try different things. And you'll talk to people, you'll join chat groups, you'll join Facebook groups, and you'll learn new things to try. So this hunting and pecking doesn't help. It still doesn't reveal the root cause path. And that's what we're talking about, is really opening up the root cause path. And if you think about it, any chronic condition, whether it be heart disease, diabetes, thyroid conditions, anything chronic, the goal would be to solve it, right? Not just suppress it. And that's really what we're talking about with migraines, solving migraines versus suppressing them. And the way our healthcare system is set up to do this requires a deep investigation. While we've been on the webinar, I've got another computer here, that's why I always look this way. We're seeing a lot of questions about, or people commenting that they have many, many subtypes, 5 subtypes, 6 subtypes, 4 subtypes. And that's common. I don't want you to think that you're an anomaly because you've got lots of subtypes. That's very common. But unfortunately, it requires a deep investigation and a custom approach. And that's just not kind of the sweet spot of our healthcare system today, right? If you've got acute conditions, we handle them really quickly and really well, very advanced in the world. But when it comes to dealing with chronic things, we don't give our doctors enough time to solve the problem. And that's what we're talking about. Because to solve the problem is not just take this medication, it's let's talk about your lifestyle and how you live and how that could be impacting it. Let's run some tests. Let's talk about stress and sleep and nutrition and make you a part of a positive community. And really look for patterns and look for finding that dominant subtype and knock that one off the pole. And then take the next dominant subtype and get rid of that one. So it requires a methodical approach that just doesn't exist today in our system. So with that, I would love to introduce you to exactly what we're talking about, the migraine solution, right? In the migraine solution, it is a comprehensive program that was developed just by Dr. Sheeler under his guidance and with him featured throughout the entire program. The goal of this program is to identify the root cause, which you've already started down that path. That's step one. And then understand what each path looks like for each of your root cause subtypes. The program itself, it's an online program delivered in videos and downloads and transcripts that you can read, is an 8-week program. And so if I were to ask you over the course of the next 8 weeks, if you could cut your migraines in half, or if you could eliminate your migraines completely, that's a lifetime of difference in just 8 weeks, right? So we hear this over and over again with folks that participate in the migraine solution. This is not a fly-by-night kind of idea. These are really addressing your root causes so you can live migraine-free. So I'm going to introduce you to Danielle. Danielle is one of our migraine solution success stories. We have lots of them. She's a single mom of 3. She actually drives. She lives in Tampa, drives to Orlando. So if anyone knows the map, that's 90 minutes of a commute each way. She's waking up at 4 a.m. to make that commute. She would have 3 to 4 migraines every week. And so her migraine subtype, just some of the questions coming in to address it, she was facial, adrenal, structural, and glucotoxicity, plus she had aura, right? So she had all of these things contributing to her migraines and stacking up her threshold. After the migraine solution, she has 3 migraines now in the last 5 months. So, when you extrapolate that to a year, she was having 120 migraines a year. That's conservative. That's at 3 migraines a week. That's 120 migraines a year. And if you add up 120 days, you're at 4 months of migraine, assuming they lasted a day each. So what a huge difference. You'll see Danielle's story is on our webpage as well. That kind of explains, we've got lots of testimonials there as well. But I want to let you know what the program contains. The first module, it's delivered weekly in online modules where you could watch the videos, you could stream the sound, or you could download the transcript if you prefer to just read it. It includes a lot of interaction as well. In the first module, we talk about planning your journey, making sure everyone has the same understanding about what migraines are, the migraine basics, how they got there. Then we move on to deeper dive on root causes and triggers. So we've talked a little bit about root causes, but there are lots of triggers out there. And so we go through how triggers stack and how that relates to your migraines and your rebounds and refractory periods. Then the information that we learned today on migraine subtypes is the first step at really understanding the deep detail on your subtype. Dr. Sheeler goes deep into the subtypes here, talks about when to worry. Sometimes you might get a migraine that's different than the others, and that pattern might happen for a while. He'll talk about when you should seek medical care with your physician and address these with your physician, maybe testing that might help, and so forth. Module 4 is where we dig in and we give you the ultimate guide to medications, because medications sometimes are a necessity for some folks, as well as the powerful combinations that Dr. Sheeler has uncovered that he puts together to get quick relief for acute migraines. It's not the long-term answer, but it gets rid of things quick if you need them, and you can work with your doctor on those. There are also natural remedies. We talk about which natural supplements and which doses of those supplements work with certain subtypes, and then also kind of quick fix hacks to turn around a migraine. We have a custom migraine solution diet that not only addresses what not to eat, because if you suffer from migraines, so many people have told you what you shouldn't eat. This one also, in addition to removing certain things, talks about what things to add back into your diet, because those things are just as critical for migraine health, as well as all those other things: caffeine, hydration, alcohol, food additives. We kind of give you the skinny on all of that. The goal here is we're pulling back the curtain and showing you what's behind the scenes, that what goes into the thought process of managing migraines, so that you can do this yourself, right? And along those lines, we teach you how to create habits that you can stick to in the long run. So there's a habit formation program that we've learned right out of Stanford. Stress and sleep. I know everyone is familiar with the idea. We always say yada, yada. That's why we called it yada, 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 right? We all know, I need to sleep more. I need to less stress in my life. Go try to live my life. But the truth is, exactly. But the truth is, sleep, it's about deep sleep. It's about how to get to those deeper stages of sleep and stay there long enough so that your body can heal. Stress is not about how do you get rid of stress, because I know I've got 2 kids. I've got lots of things going on. I get it. House, husband, animals, all of it. Stress isn't about how do you get rid of it as much as it is how do you change your perspective on it, and how do you manage it with these kind of ancient techniques that kind of reduce stress. We talk about exercise. Sometimes exercise is your friend, sometimes it's your enemy. We talk about those things and give explanations and demonstrations. And then we integrate it all with Dr. Bob's kind of secrets to success for permanent improvement. And so all of that is included in the migraine solution. That is the web address, destinywellmigrainesolution.com. And I just want you to know what's included in the program beyond the online education where you can download the transcripts or watch the videos. So you'll have access to this program ongoing, lifetime access to the program. There are 70 videos, which equals 7 hours of video content. Now, it's not all at once. It's not wah, wah, wah. There's a lot of funny things in there. Dr. Bob kind of he's a magician in his spare time, so we get to see a little bit of magic. But they're broken into weekly modules so that it's digestible. You can learn it and integrate it into your life and then move into the next week. So it's not overwhelming. There's a 50-page nutrition guide in addition to the video training, but you can take that guide. There are recipes in it and lots of other bonuses in there. Because we know, Dr. Bob always holds up a blank piece of paper and he says, this is what I learned in medical school to test for migraines. So he chose his 5 most easily tested at home kind of lab tests for migraine, and we created a migraine kit. And so you'll get that migraine lab testing kit as part of the program. It comes delivered right to your door. And in addition to that, he'll go live online and give a results interpretation so that everyone that's participating in the program has their results in hand. They're asking questions, he's answering them, he's telling you what a high value means, what a low value means, how you change it. So that's access to a migraine, really an international migraine expert is giving you advice in a live setting. It also includes the nutritional supplements, the first month of nutritional supplements that are specific to your subtype, your dominant subtype. So we work with you on that. Plus you get menus and shopping lists, and all of those things are included. So I think the important thing here, though, is to know that this is not theory. This is in practice. Dr. Bob, if you Google him, you'll see he has a practice in Scottsdale. He has his very own patients. And so you could, for instance, I don't want to put you on the spot, But you could, for instance, fly to Scottsdale and you would work with Dr. Sheeler in the same way that the migraine solution is laid out. So we just wanted to make it available. Both of us have been in clinical practice for quite a time and have recognized that working one patient at a time is beneficial for the patients you're working with. But making this available to everyone is really our goal. We want people to stop suffering and start fixing their migraines. So the program looks like this online. There's the lab kit and the lab results. There's the ultimate guide to migraine medications. There's our nutritional supplements that you get, the migraine solution diet. We've also have a physician, Dr. Angela O'Neill, who's our chief clinical officer. She's actually formulated an organic aromatherapy, 2 different products. One is for nausea and one is for migraine tension and pain. And that's included. That also comes delivered to your door, along with blue blocking glasses that we address within the program, but they help deeper sleep. The other bonus that is huge is that we've created a members-only private Facebook group called the Migraine Solution Insiders Club. And you have unlimited lifetime access to this Facebook group. And we delivered on Facebook because it's the most easy, that's where everyone kind of spends their time. So we made it approachable that way. The important thing to know here is Dr. Bob, me, the rest of the clinical team go live within this Facebook group weekly. So you have access to migraine experts, nutrition, registered dietitians, behavior change therapists to guide you along the way. And so if the program is only 8 weeks, think of what having 6 to 8 hours worth of access to an expert. You can ask your questions, any questions. We have a private way to ask them if you would prefer to be anonymous. It's really just a fantastic way to have access to the people that can directly impact your path for migraine freedom, honestly. And then here is that fast action bonus that I told you about in the very, very beginning. So for those of you who are still here, I'll just let you know, this is a full spectrum food sensitivity profile. So this is another at-home lab test. Just prick your finger, a couple drops of blood, and you send it back to us and our lab processes it. We're testing for 96 of the most common food sensitivities, okay? And so just like, I think it was Lizette that had corn and soy as her food sensitivities that played a role in there, knowing what your food sensitivities are can be very beneficial. It's not the only thing. We're not saying it's the linchpin, but again, these are layers and layers of conditions and inflammation that got you to where you're at. And so we're just chipping away at finding the root causes and peeling them away. And so this lab test, if you go to the Destiny Well website right now, this lab test is $200. We sell it all the time. So in this case, we're including it for free, but this fast action bonus really is just for the rest of today. So at midnight tonight, this bonus goes away. But we think it's a great bonus. It gives you plenty of time to think about it, talk to your husband or wife or significant other, decide that this is really what you want to do. The website, DestinyWellMigraineSolution.com, that's where you'll want to go. That's not only does it give you more information, there are testimonials on that page, but there's a live chat button as well. So feel free to live chat with our support team. If you have questions, we make sure that you get answers. We can guide you in that direction. And then also, if you choose to join us in the Migraine Solution, you can do so at that website. It's right there in many places. Certainly scroll all the way to the bottom and you'll see two choices. So the point is, if you really are ready to start really reversing your migraines, rather than this hunt and peck process, you can get started. And like always, you're probably wondering, I know, you're going to tell me a price or something. So there is an investment, obviously, but we created this. And as we sat down and said, no, it's got to include this, right? It's got to have supplements. It's got to have lab tests. They have to have this piece of it. We need a live webinar. as we started putting all this information together, we recognized that the value of this came out to about $5,000 or more. And we know that that is not affordable. That's not a way that we can engage lots of people and help lots of people, because that is our goal. And so what we did was, to make it easy, we created this for just $299 today, and then 3 more installments of $299. So you could get started with a migraine solution for as little as $299 today. And then we just bill you monthly over the next 3 months, 30 days, for $299. And you have access to everything that I just listed here, including that fast action bonus. If you are more interested in saving a little money, you could just do a single payment. So there's a single payment of $997 that you could do, and that would save you almost $200. So you have a choice. It doesn't matter to us. You can see, and you'll see this on that website if you scroll all the way to the bottom. These are the buttons to purchase and join us. But you can see it includes the same thing. What's included on the left is what's included on the right. We don't mind how you pay for it, whatever's better for you or easier for you or most convenient. So you can go ahead and do that. So when you click on one of these buttons, it will take you to a screen that looks like this, where you can put in your, email address, your mailing address, your payment information, and that's it. It's that simple. And as I mentioned, it includes all of these things. So the actual program itself, imagine having a migraine expert that's going to create 70 videos and 7 hours of content for you to learn. This is not a quick fly-by-night kind of program. This is something that's we've invested a lot of energy so that people can take control of their own health. That's actually why the company's named Destiny Well. It's really about controlling our own health destiny, right? And so we include the migraine solution test. Again, on our website, it's sold for $119. Your first month of supplements, we include it. And depending on your subtype, the prices are different, but we're not going to charge more than that. So we charge $108, that's included in the program. The value is $108. The bonus of having the Migraine Insiders Club at a minimum is $2,000, because you have access to Dr. Bob, myself, the rest of the clinical team, and our weekly go lives, the community working together, very positive, ongoing. So you can pop in next year and say, oh, they're creeping back. I don't know what to do. What do you think? We're all online. Also the aromatherapy, the blue blocking glasses, and then that fast action bonus of the food sensitivity lab testing kit is also included in there. So all of this really, it comes out to over $5,000, and it's very legitimate. So like I said, we just wanted to make it affordable so that people could get started. The payment plan is only $299 to get started, and then we pay over time. And so I'm just going to put up here everything that's included while we answer some questions, because I know that the questions have kind of been rolling in.
Right, and I've been looking at the chat stuff too, and I have a few things to say. And so we really do like to interact with people and get to know them. The Facebook groups are broken up into small pods, so you basically have a tribe, because having people support you through this is part of the healing process. And so although I can't be your doctor, I can really guide you on things to think about, how to think about things, how to work with your provider, what kinds of dietary things work for people with different categories of things. So we really do connect with the people who want to be engaged there. And so, we always think about money. It's like, oh, money we don't like to talk about. But, in these days of high copays, high deductibles, lots of people, one visit to the ER would cost them this much, because you got to fill up your whole deductible first before they start paying. And so it's like, oh, that's a lot of money. But so is having migraines, so is missing the weekends with your grandchildren or your friends, or not being able to go on outings, or you can't plan a weekend at the theater because there's a 50% chance you're going to have a bad enough migraine that you're going to waste those tickets. And so part of this is taking back your life. Somebody asked, what percentage of people have success? And I would say the majority of people have significant improvement in their headaches by the end of the program. But to completely get headache free, like my own journey, it took me like 16 weeks for everything to really kick in and get better. But some people get dramatically better right away when we identify a root cause. Other people make clear progress in the process, and as they do things more and more, their brain rewires those circuits that have led to migraine.
I would say that everyone that has done the work gets a result.
Right.
I think that's the important thing. So as you can imagine, some people purchase and then don't really want to participate, but doing the work will yield a result.
Yeah, or they don't want to, but they want to, but they don't get around to it. So somebody asked about teeth grinding, if there are things to do about that, and yes, there are. There, in addition to special dental splints and stuff that your dentist can use, there are root causes. There are some medicines that are common in our society that use that, and we can tell you alternatives to talk to your doctor about that actually make that go away or even treat it if it's from an underlying problem. There's also types of biofeedback and stuff that helps that. I had another question or comment about, what are the causes of trigeminal nerve pain? Well, migraine itself can activate that trigeminal nerve, and then you need to just treat the underlying migraine threshold. There are specific types of trigeminal pain that don't fit migraine patterns, so just like zaps, and those come if the nerve is compressed. But most of this pain that we're talking about in the trigeminal nerve distribution is migraine going down that, because we call migraine a trigeminal vascular disorder. So the blood vessel system in the brain and the trigeminal system that goes to the brain, the lining of the brain and the face, all reverberates together. Someone commented that their 5-year-old had migraines, and that's not uncommon. Migraine with aura often starts very young, and there are things to do about it. Our program is not designed for children, but I would encourage you to seek care and get help for that, because kids get headaches that often will go away quicker, but they can be disabling and affect how they grow up. And so I would encourage you to get care for your little person too.
Yep. So where did the environmental toxicity come into my quiz? Oh, so I'm not sure of your exact results.
But they're asking which question told them they would or wouldn't have had that.
Sure. So we ask questions about foods that you eat. We ask questions about exposure to mold and things like that.
Right. So it would have been some of the exposure questions.
Okay, great. So there was a question, does rebound happen with all migraine medication?
And the truth is, it does. There are some medicines like ergots or ergotamine, dihydroergotamine that are usually used to treat rebound. But even though ergot's been around since the early 1900s, there are conditions of ergotism that involve rebound. So triptans, the most common Imitrex, Relpax type, Maxalt type medicines, tend to cause rebound quicker, but it goes away quicker. Even simple analgesics like ibuprofen and Tylenol, if you get up between 10 and 15 days a month, can cause rebound. And so we can teach you the kinds of things that are most likely to cause it and thresholds to stay below to keep from activating the rebound component that makes your headaches almost impossible to treat. So we've said a lot. This whole hour has been about teaching you what. And so the answer that we think is good news is that what is that there are different types of migraine and that you can classify these and understand them. The whole program that takes weeks to do is how. So now that I know the what, now that I know what I have, and I know that there are different pathways to address this rather than just throw in the same standard medicines at it all the time, we have to really make this more personalized and more precise. So we think personalized precision medicine gets you better results than one size fits all. And that's the 8-week program, the how.
That's exactly right. There's another question. My migraines are provoked by sunlight and started after menopause, though I had 1 or 2 as a child with aura. Now they seem to be without aura. Thyroid, adrenal, and environmental toxicity subtypes. Is that unusual?
It's not the most usual pattern, but if you've ever had aura in your life, if you've had 2 or more occasions of aura, then you have migraine with aura. So a lot of people say, well, I get, 30 headaches a year and only 2 of them have aura. You're in the aura group if you have aura sometimes. And so the fact that it's there after menopause and with aura means that it's the type that didn't go away with menopause, and hormonal changes and other things can still affect that. Some folks after menopause, their hormones just go down to a low level. A few people, they go down to 0. And so that's something that we can tell you things that would help and affect that. Another thing that happens not uncommonly after age 50 is sometimes the aura will dissociate from the migraine. So people will just get aura and they don't get headache. And so if they're not having anything else and they didn't ever know about it before, it's scary. It's like, oh, that's like stroke type symptoms. That's why the diagnosis of migraine requires the aura symptoms, the completely reversible symptoms, to come back 2 or more times. Because the first time it could be a stroke. It's like, what is this? This is terrifying. I can't speak, or I can't see out of the whole left side of my vision field. But if that's a recurrent thing, then it's migraine with aura. And like I said, 15% of the time that gets to be just aura too. And both the just aura and the migraine with aura are treatable by specific approaches.
Mm-hmm. So there's another one. Will you talk about the problem with flying and barometric changes?
Yes, we have specific things that we can think of that are good to do for flying. Some of it's the dehydration, some of the exposure to toxins like benzene. You get a lot of benzene exposure. And then some of it's the time zone circadian changes. And so we can talk about that. Other parts of the barometric pressure, there are specific things to do about that, like folks who are sensitive to changes in the weather or incoming storms. So one thing you could do is move and live underneath a waterfall. Another is you could live on the beach. But if neither of those are practical for you, we've got some devices and other things that you could probably use in other parts that aren't under a waterfall or at the beach.
Well, and lowering your threshold, right? So lowering your other related subtypes will get you to the point where that barometric pressure might not be triggering that migraine anymore, because you were able to address some of the other root causes.
Right. Just like me and red wine. It's like I could drink that wine when I went to Europe and I didn't get a headache, and previously I would have. The same thing is if you're far away from your threshold, then the shift in barometric pressure may not cause that.
Right. So this is a question that sounds at the beginning like it's specific, but it's something that I bet a lot of people are wondering. So I wasn't certain about the subgroups because I'm completed menopause, but my migraines haven't decreased. They've used to be tied to my menstruation. In fact, they have increased. So I'm now having rebound headaches on top of that, plus having an increase in migraines after menopause. So she came out as adrenal and hormonal, and she's curious if that makes sense.
It's fixable and it makes sense. And lots of times there are different layers. And so we would work with you to help you determine which of those layers to work on first and how to change your thresholds and get further away from that. And so sometimes addressing the adrenal component, the adrenal is a master hormone. So if your adrenals are out of whack, I had a patient last year who had Addison's disease where their adrenal glands had virtually completely stopped working. Their thyroid tests are way out of balance, their sugar metabolism's way out of balance and stuff. When we fixed their adrenal glands without doing any thyroid medicine, their thyroid got better. We see that a lot with thyroid. When we fix their thyroid, then their menstrual cycles get back to normal. We even use that as one of the things we test if somebody has infertility. It's like, oh, do you have a thyroid problem? That's fixable. So we go upstream as far as possible. And so like if you had both adrenal and thyroid issues, we'd address the adrenal first because that might straighten out the thyroid.
There's a hierarchy to hormones that the reproductive hormones, the sex hormones, are at the bottom. They're the tail. So if the tail gets swung in different directions, it's likely because of some other hormone upstream. Great. Okay. My son was highly exposed to heavy metals as a baby, but nothing in his results. He's 23 now. So yeah, I'm not sure that we ask questions in the quiz about heavy metal exposure because very often people don't know that they've had that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of work in China, and there, people are living near factories and battery, battery production and mining areas and stuff like that. And so those types of things, so we'll work to tease those out as we go through the modules. We can even give you specific questions that tell you if you're more likely to do that. But there are ways that we can instruct you or give you resources where you can test your short and long-term exposure. So for instance, arsenic, you generally need to test for short-term exposure in the urine because it passes through the blood so fast. But longer term, you need to analyze things that are around a longer time. Blood may help. Sometimes we even test hair and nails because they're around for months. And if your arsenic exposure is intermittent, you can have a really high cancer risk as well as more headaches and stuff, but you might miss it on a single test. So we can tell you based on the kinds of things you're exposed to, the area of the country where you have more lead, where you have more arsenic, those types of things, or what your diet is, which of those things might be worth pursuing as a secondary cause.
And if you'd like to take the quiz again, or if you haven't taken it and you want to take it, it's always better to take it on a computer so that you get that graphic image that you've seen throughout Dr. Bob's presentation, the blue image with the body. You could go to DestinyWellMigraineSolution.com. There's a button on that page specifically that will lead you to the quiz as well. It's in some of your other emails in addition to that. So I feel like we've answered just about everyone's questions.
Right. We're going to talk about the decoder ring at all in terms of how people figure out from the letter output they got, or tell them where to go for information on that. Maybe we could even post that on our website or something.
Yeah, definitely. So if you took the quiz, you should have a series of letters, XTR, XF, XA, might say S. So the hyphen separates them, if you haven't figured this out, that each one of those is a different one of the subtypes. If there's an X in front of it, cross it off and just circle those little letters that do not exist with an X in front of them. And those are your subtypes. So it's all in the image, but if you didn't get the image, then like an F is facial, an A is adrenal, an S is structural, TR is trauma, TH is thyroid, E is environmental, G is glucotoxicity, and I think that's it, all of them.
Right.
Oh,
yeah, so
R is reproductive. Yep, and I think that's all of them.
Yeah, so let's put the decoder on our website so people can find it there.
The decoder's up there, and it's also if you want to know, if you took the quiz and don't have your results, go to DestinyWellMigraineSolution.com. Go right to the chat, and a little orange circle will pop up for chat, and let them know you didn't get your results correct or you don't have your results, and they'll give them your email. We store just the result set. We don't store all the questions that you've answered, but we know what your result is just in case you need it.
Right,
so
we store the output of our algorithm, not your individual questions, your own health information, just the cranked out result from the algorithm, and you can get that from our team.
Absolutely. So with that, we really hope that we see you on the other side in the Migraine Solution Insiders Club and in the Destiny Well Migraine Solution. Feel free to go to DestinyWellMigraineSolution.com. Our support team is on there right now answering questions. Any chat questions you have, feel free. We really appreciate your time today. But the most important thing I hope that you walk away with is that addressing your root cause can actually lead to the path of migraine freedom. So it's not a myth. It's not a scam. It can be done, and you can do it. So thank you so much for joining us.
Right. So thank you. We appreciate your taking your time to do this. We hope you got something out of this and learned about migraine, whether you join us or not. But we would love to see you on the other side. We have a real passion for working with people with migraine because I think they're ignored by society and the medical groups. And we have different layers of things that we can add on to what you know. And these are the kinds of holistic things about you as a whole person, about the things that contribute to and are fixable about your migraines, that we'd love to work with you and give you access to those solutions.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye now.